What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
I think the trap door for me is I'm asking a question that I already know the answer to, and I'm just waiting for them to shut up so I can show them how smart I am. Uh,
Yeah.
which is a trap door because it means that I'm not present, I'm not listening, and that I'm not. You and I, when we first met a few weeks back, we're talking about the fact of you ask the question why,
Yep.
and you keep going down to levels because the answer is usually 4, 5, 6, 7 levels down. Because you get that person comfortable, confident, looking at things from different perspectives. Uh, and I got a question for you because you train people on this coaching methodology. I mean, that's the cool thing. You're rolling this thing out now to help arm both consultants to be coaches, which is those are two different skill sets. Okay. But you're also working with leaders to help them embrace this concept as a leader. I'm a coach more than a doer or an arguer or the source of all knowledge and wisdom. Uh, what traps have you fallen into? Have you seen rather that clients you work with that are obstacles for them to make that bridge into really having a coaching mentality?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that, when we look at, okay, where has their coaching experience been derived from? And that's usually like where we are sitting in a room and we're with a big organization. And last team we had was 18 different executives. And everybody was speaking to a boss past experience. So they're really organically just picking up what they see as coaching, but they haven't really formally gone through a coaching program. And one of the questions we asked in the survey before we did the workshop was, how many people have gotten a formal training for leading people? And 80%, and the average person tenure in there was 20 years experience at an executive level. 80% had never received any training on leading people, but they were leading massive teams. And the way that they were coaching was really just derived from previous leaders. And
Hmm.
so when we got everybody through our course, the question I always ask is, okay, how has this changed the way you think about coaching? It's like, I can't believe I was coaching the way I was previous. Totally paradigm shift on how they want to, go. And a question we always try and ask in the first part of the course is, who benefits from you being a good coach? And it was interesting because everybody had a goal to, help themselves get better in their role as an executive. But when we really got into who benefits, they were family members, friends, team members, cross-functional investments that they wanted to make inside of the firm. And it was really inspiring to see that because then you could see the depth that they could have or the reach they could have by having a really formalized coaching system that they could naturally apply in all different kinds of systems.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious a bit about your perspective on something. Maybe I got a generational question for you.
Yeah.
Hmm. What's been your observation, your research on the desire of our newer generations, boomers being on sort of the oldest generation kind of in the workforce right now.
Yeah.
Um, the newer generation, are you seeing that there really is a thirst or hunger for more coaching for them? Are they reaching for that? Are they asking for that?
I would say in the right environments, yes. I think that a lot of times we're looking to maybe tell them what they need to do
Hmm.
versus what do they see as an opportunity to do, or how do they want to contribute. A lot of times that they're treated like an employee versus a team member. And I think that's the biggest change that I don't see sometimes, because our newest generation, of course, is equipped with all these strategies that they didn't have 20 or 30 years ago on how people can utilize technology. So if an organization looks at that frontline staff as a resource and an opportunity and a long-term investment, I see a lot of receptive employees, but they need to see coaching as an investment. And so what I mean by that is that every conversation should be like you're making a token in the jar. And that each time you have a conversation with a new employee, instead of just like, again, transactionally checking the box, go back to our word transformation. It's that investment. We call the emotional bank account from Stephen Covey is the same way with coaching. It's like making an investment in each one of those coaching conversations. That's how you build equity with team members on the front line. And a lot of times it's just not happening.
Yeah, totally. And when you stop and think about it, and we compare it to professional sports, because that's kind of the image we have of coaches, that what does a coach want? Yeah, of course, they want to win the game, correct? But
Agreed.
one of the people I've interviewed, and I've referenced Carl a number of times throughout my interviews, because played for the Denver Broncos for 12 years. Name's on the side of Mile High Stadium. And what I love about my visit with Carl was that he's on the field with the entire team, not just those on the field, the sideline, all are world-class athletes, every single one of them. And so I'd love talking to him about what's it like playing with just everyone's a world class athlete, and what makes them perform. I mean, how do you deal in that kind of environment? And what the coach wants from that world class athlete is for them to perform at their best.
Yep.
And so what happens is the athlete, like you said earlier, the athlete has to bring their best to the game, and that's what Carl said. He said, "Man, he said if they bring less than the best, we have a tendency to run them off." I interviewed Boogaloo Bolton, who was the horn player for a BB King band, and he was also his road manager, and he said the same thing. He said these are world class players with BB King, and he said the musicians that came in, if they didn't bring their best in, the problem we ran into is that means we had to work harder. If they brought their best in, it was easier for me to bring my best to play off of them.
Yeah.
So, with what we're talking about, the best has to come in. At the same time, the coach, from a mental standpoint, they're looking to figure out what do I need to do to help that person perform, sometimes even better than they think that they can, to
Hmm.
stretch to perform at their best, and that's coaching. That's not consulting, is it?
No, I definitely see that as definitely a coaching side. And I think that, and I love the professional sports references. I feel like any organization we go in, we always have kind of sports references. So I love that you're using that because when you look at the coaches in professional sports, the massive investment that they make in individual players is a direct correlation to how they perform. So, like, as in, if they lean in and put everything they possibly can into that player, the player's response should be, what are they giving back to the coach? Well, it's their performance on the field. It's performance on the ice. Everything that they do. Now, I'll correlate that back to a work environment. I don't see it as much when the coach is in work. They're expecting the player to play their best and give their best performance, but the coach isn't making the same investment when they show up to those coaching scenarios. And also, too, the amount of times that you would watch, say, an NCAA basketball game, how many times they're coaching the bench? Well, they're probably coaching 100 plus times a game to individual players. But how often in an organization are they having those quick little coaching check ins while people are playing the game? And it's just not happening at the same level. So sometimes what we expect in an organization from a player isn't a fair correlation because our investment that we're putting in isn't relating to what we're getting back from the performance. And so a lot of
Yeah.
times we'll get, hey, we want to terminate this employee. And my immediate question back would be, amazing. Let's go through the investment that you've made in them, and then let's look at the results that's driving this conversation. And a lot of times, like, no, we just want to move on from this because they have not put the time in to grow the person to the level that they have the potential to be. And that's why I love coaching so much because when you have the right environment, you're getting the best out of the players.
You
And if
betcha.
people are consistent with coaching, you can take an organization to a whole different level that they never knew was possible because people are truly leaning into coaching culture.
Yeah, I love that. And so, the three questions that's because of my over 25 years in executive search. Employee transition that was my backyard. And same scenario where companies would come and said, I want to terminate somebody. And they thought that would be magic to my ears, right? Oh, good. Mike's going to get some more business out of this. And it
Yeah.
really was the flip side of it because my question was, why is that person not working out? Because just putting another body in there isn't going to solve the problem unless you ask three questions. And I wrote them down as you were talking is that if the person you're considering doing a transition with, do they really have clarity and understanding about the role, its importance, what's expected of them, what clarity is missing?
Mhm.
And then the second is, what training or guidance have you given them or not given them? And have you given them everything they need? Now, if you answer those two questions, then you can move to the third one, which has to do with what's the effort that they're putting in to the role. And if you go through that kind of process, sometimes you're able to come back in and not necessarily turn someone around, but you just get more clarity and more comfort. And it's the same thing. There's no greener pasture. The next person coming in there, you better have those questions answered and
Yeah.
expectations drawn, don't you?
Agreed. I love that perspective. And it's interesting. It reminds me back, I used to have massive teams when I ran with a telecommunications company. And I remember when we evaluated terminations, we'd always kind of look at two hands. We'd say, did they fail us or did we fail them?
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of cases, sometimes we do hire employees, we make major investments, and they failed us because either they weren't selected or they just didn't fit or they didn't invest in the process to be the best version of themselves in the organization, and then they expire and we need to move on. But a lot of times we'd say, hey, I think we failed them. I don't think we made the right investment. I think that we didn't do enough coaching. We didn't ask for more of them. And I think that, some of the best coaches I've ever had in my life is that they saw more potential in me than I saw in myself. And I think that if you don't have leaders that are connecting with team members and letting them know that they see a better version of them than they see in themselves, and you help get them there and you're willing to push them farther, you're willing to go farther, do more, and accomplish more. And I think, it's kind of the good to great concept, right? I think that they see a good version of themselves and a good coach sees a great version of themselves. It's a matter of going, you're willing to go there with them, and you can't do it for them.
Right. Yeah. And so if somebody is a high performer, they got great attitude, great experience, getting great results, your job is to do what at that stage? Get out of their way, right? You
Yeah.
don't need to be a big coach of that. But the problem you run into is if somebody's attitude is low, but they've got good experience, or they got great attitude, but the experience level may not be um, uh, help. They may not be performing at the level that they want to or you want them to. What I wrote
Mm,
down over here, what I think that what happens when people are not performing, they start looking and they're looking at what they can't do.
mm.
That's what they're doing. You're looking at them as a leader, hopefully, and seeing what they could do. And you're looking at them from the place of going back to your word, what their potential is. And there's a chasm between those two in somebody's development, right? The self-limiting is I can't cause, or this is not working out. And you're seeing potential, and you have to find a way to be able to help them bridge that gap from can't to potential. And that's where coaching comes into play. Not being authoritarian, saying go do.
I love that. And I think that exactly what you're saying is like, as a coach, you just get this like opportunity to challenge their limiting beliefs. And it's amazing to get somebody to go beyond what they thought was their limits and then to stand back and go, okay, what do you think? What's possible now? And I love the look on people's face or their response. It's like, I never thought I could get to here. And I've had so many clients that have either doubled or tripled their business, and when I'm talking to the CEO, I'd say, hey, if you had to, go back and think of the version you were 3 years ago and some of the goals you were setting in your thought process, what would you tell yourself? You're like, and a lot of times they say, I don't even know what I'd say. I was such a different person that I was just totally not even thinking the same. Now their mind is just open on what's possible.
Yeah, you're making me think about the phone call. And what I mean by that is that I was working for Tommy, and she called me in her office, and she says, "You're about to get a phone call from Terry, who is on the national chairman, conference chairman of the National Association of Personnel Services, and he's going to ask you a question. You're going to say yes to it." I said, "What's that question?" It says he's going to ask you to come and speak at the national conference, and I'm going, "What?" you know? And she goes, he's going to ask you to, there's a long story that goes behind that. But at the time, I was in the middle of having just massive panic attacks. I mean, there was about a 15-year period of time that my life was just being limited because of just this battleground I was on. But she goes, you're capable, and you're going to say yes when he asks you this question. And so he called, and I said yes. And today, I have a reach that goes literally from Canada to South Africa.
That's
You know,
incredible.
but she saw in me much better than I saw myself. Now, here's the cool thing: is 20 years ago, I convinced her to be my wife. So that's my dad said I signed the ultimate non-compete agreement when I did that. But uh,
Amazing.
but it's interesting that whenever people speak into us, and we really as leaders, as coaches, and that's why I said it's important that people who are listening to this don't limit the impact of this. This is if somebody's trying to develop a professional as a consultant or as a professional coach, a lot of merit of what we're talking about. If somebody wants to increase your chops as a leader,
Mhm.
same capacity, because that's what we're talking about. It's having a coaching mentality when it comes to leadership as far as driving things forward. Um, I want to circle back around on this concept of radical
Yeah.
growth, okay? Because of especially in today's time. Dave, I'm kind of curious where you're seeing is the number one word I keep hearing right now is uncertainty. It's uncertain.
Mhm.
It's just
Yep.
that leaders are really wrestling with this. And the reason why they're wrestling with it is because their people are wrestling with it. We're trying to figure out how is it affecting us as a society? How's it affecting us as an economy? How's it affecting us as a company? How's it affecting me now or what might happen? Um, what we talked, you dropped a word at the very beginning, which is resilience,
Mhm.
right? From your perspective, in order to have radical growth, um, what do we do to have the resilience you need to punch through walls, other than
Yeah.
just tighten your belt and go get them?
Well, I think putting your head down is only going to get you so far. I think that what people really need right now, especially when we're looking in enterprise environments or even some small environments, is we really need clarity and trust. And I think right now, when you think of like challenging times, you need good communication. So like the reason why we do workshops on like navigating difficult conversations, because I would say there's more conversations right now that are being avoided than being had. And I think, if we want to have radical growth, we need to have really rich and deep conversations because that's really where growth starts. Because most times when people don't have clarity on the direction ahead, and that's why we do succession planning, it's kind of like looking down the road, and we're from Atlantic Canada, so we see a lot of foggy roads. We need to clear the fog, and that's through good communication. Comes back to clarity, connection, and really getting good confirmation that they believe where the organization is going. If they're open to ask questions about certain things, be open to receive that information. You might not have all the answers, but if you're willing to at least table the conversation, you can really help get people to the other side. I would say the reason why people are leaving organizations is because there's lack of conversations, there's lack of clarity, and there's an anxiety that's in the market right now. And I would say that if we want radical growth, I would say be upfront with everybody, be clear, and put more stuff on the table that, hey, this can be a challenging time, but every challenging time has growth opportunities, and we need to find where they're at and get more heads into the right solution.
You betcha. So I need to throw this out as our last kind of topic and question because
Yeah.
I got to get your perspective on this because of what you just launched. It has to do with this in today's time, and I think it's also been throughout history, is we have a tendency to avoid uncomfortable conversations, and we can run down a list of what might make us uncomfortable. Um, and a lot of times, the uncomfortable conversation has to do with, I don't know how you're going to respond. That's why I don't bring this up. It could be,
Mhm.
I don't know what to say if you ask because I don't have the answer. It could be, I don't know enough about this subject. It could be, I can't get the results. I can go down this long list of what could possibly cause it. Anything in your coaching program that you help people roll out to become comfortable with uncomfortable conversations?
Yeah, there's a lot. And I think that, a lot of the times when people are worried about how people are going to respond to a conversation, it's typically because they want to tell them something. So they're trying to create a one-way conversation.
Hmm.
Versus when you ask a question, you're talking about a two-way conversation, an exchange of information. And I think that you can agree with this is that if somebody's telling you something and it's already a friction-based environment, you're probably creating an emotional environment that becomes reactive. Versus if you structure a two-way conversation and you're asking questions, you're trying to proactively create an exchange of information. And it's kind of a more logical focus on how you can enter a conversation. And that is all in our Radical Growth book, but it's also in our Radical Growth coaching program where we actually take people through those modules on not just how to influence growth, but how to have rich and deep conversations, even if they're challenging conversations or difficult conversations. Because we believe that more relationships have ended by what wasn't said than what was said.
Mm-hmm. Totally, totally, and that's why it's wish we had more time. This is amazing, especially on that subject, because what happens is, if as a leader and as a coaching leader, if I'm encouraging dialogue, as you're talking about, if I'm encouraging and creating a safe place for you to have a voice at the table, I get buy-in from you, not necessarily agreement, but at least buy-in on the steps and the solutions and the direction that we're headed.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. I mean, I will tell you, some of the people that I've had the largest growth with on my team or as clients have been probably the people I've had the most difficult conversations with. And I'll always go back to care and candid, right? If you care but you're not candid, you create distance. You know, if you're candid but you don't care, you create dysfunction. But if you're care and you're candid, you can create transformation because I care enough about you to be candid with you. And people really appreciate that because being direct with somebody is challenging, but when you do it with care, you can really take a conversation to a new level.
Yeah, huge. And so people ask me, Mike, where do you get your list or your people guests for your show? And I said, I look for something specific, and what I look for is a high intellect, high knowledge, high experience, but somebody who's very much a heart-led leader. And I love what you said because of this, where this caring nature, because that's not being soft, it's being human. As being human. And I can't think of a better way to put a cap on this. Dave, thank you for your time. If you're looking for contact information on Dave, it's in checking the show notes. We'll have links in there for you to be able to reach out to him. And then if you want more information on the coaching program, reach out to him. And also, don't forget his book is the book already out, or is it being launched now?
The book is out right now, Radical Growth. You can grab it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kindle. We have an audio book as well. So it is out in the market and jump out and grab a copy.
Sounds good then. Well, thanks so much for your time and best of luck in your radical growth.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility. It's an honor.